Hello. As we are closing the year 2024, one thing definitely which we have experienced the entire year is seeing the article about artificial intelligence and basically its various presence in all the fields of life and work. Some or other way, none of us are untouched by it, either using the technology that is mobile in our hand or maybe this internet. Everywhere we see that AI has taken over, AI versus human. So many challenges, so many errors, some image creation, some video creations. In fact, during this poll of Indian democracy, lot of videos were generated where the prime minister himself kind of made uh, fun or made kind of endorsed the various creatives that came out with AI generated content. And this content generation has given a whole new scope of work opportunity and emerging area of professional development. Now, while I'm not the right person to talk about it, but today's career show, we have a guest to talk about the entire scope of AI and what it holds in future. But before I go there, I would like to take you through exactly kind of setting a context about artificial intelligence. What is its relevance when it comes to somebody like us who are not in regular touch with the technical world and where all it has some impact. With this, let's get started with our talk show today and know more about our guest and his career journey of 3 decades. Let's get started. Welcome to the Career Talkie with Abhilash. Hi, I'm Abhilash and welcome to the Career Talkie with Abhilash. Every time we try our best to bring some guest who has had a great career, a great learning throughout navigating his or her career. And today we have with us a special guest, somebody all the way from California, Mr. Robert Franklin. He is the founder and the CEO of Journey to Agility and a thought leader in AI and project management. With over 3 decades of experience in technology, Robert has held prominent roles at various companies like JP Morgan Chase, BNY, PayPal, Cisco WebEx, Walt Disney Internet Group, Intuit, and Adobe. He is renowned for transforming organizations through scalable AI solutions, data integrity practices, and fostering collaboration among teams. Let me tell you right away that I'm not putting some jargon because our conversation will make us understand what is Robert's entire journey to even be a leader in this area. This is the most emerging area where we see that the future of work, even if you belong to a technology background or non technology background, this is going to stay and affect your professional life or your world of work. So, Robert's remarkable journey also includes founding the Silicon Valley Project AI Meetup. And I'm very fortunate. In fact, I reached out to him and we have scheduled our time blocking through his Meetup app itself, which has become a thriving community for AI professionals. His passion for simplifying complex frameworks and turning challenges into opportunities has inspired countless professionals. It's truly an honor to have you with us today, Robert. Welcome to the show.
Oh, wow. Well, when I hear you say that, I say, like, who's that guy you're talking about? That was, thank you so much for that. I'd like to share with you my journey. And I often, I name the company Journey to Agility because I feel that is, we're on a never ending quest to like learn and grow, and it never ends. And particularly, I'll talk to more about AI. It's only doubled down with AI as far as the ability to adapt and learn is, you know, that much faster. But I'll start with you at the beginning of my journey when I started not my career, but after I graduated from college, I was getting my master's at NYU in social work. And I was about halfway done with it when I realized I was kind of like, I'm not going to be happy like doing this work, and I'm not going to make much money, and that's a bad combination. I'd rather not be happy and make a lot of money. So that was my first pivotal point in my career, or my professional career, where I was like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I had no idea. And there was like a month or two, I was just riding my bicycle literally around Manhattan, trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do? And I always loved, like, working with computers, like, since high school. And when I say high school, computers were literally, you would save your information on a tape cassette. The first PCs like the TRS 80 from Radio Shack. So I go back a long time. And then I bought my first computer in college with my own money that I earned working. So I started thinking, like, what do I really, what do I want to do with the rest of my life professionally? And I was like, well, I like, I just like working with computers. Let me see what's out there. And in those days, this is like pre-internet, right? Or public internet, really. And in the back in the New York Times, they would have these advertisements for, like, Oracle programmers, PL SQL. And I was like, $125 an hour. And that, even now, that's a nice amount. Back then, that was like in the 90s, that was a lot of money. So I was like, oh, wow, I got to learn how to do that. Kind of critical point number two, that what I learned was they had different, there were different databases. Like Oracle was just up and coming. There was one called, uh, oh, what was the name of that? It was not, and there was another database, but it was more of a local database. And they paid, like, whatever, $40 an hour. So I was like, when I learned, like, there's really no difference in learning coding for a $40 an hour job versus a $120 an hour job. So I was like, I'm going to learn PL SQL. And I did some research, and there was a program at Columbia University, and it was like a year and a half program and 8 courses on relational database design. And that was the start of my career. And I did that at night as I worked as an admin for, like, Citibank and a company called US Trust. And then I got my first job in Connecticut at, like, a healthcare company. But this was a very progressive healthcare company that literally was started by this Harvard MBA out of his bedroom. And he grew into one of the largest healthcare companies on the East Coast of the United States. And it was more like a startup. And I was there 5 years, and they were dog years. They were like, every year was 7 years. I started out as a programmer supporting the sales and marketing department. And here's another key point where I fell in love with data. Like, I fell in love with the importance of data, and why is it important? This company was moving to the new Oracle database system, and they were calling it's called backbridging data. Like, what they were doing is the old system was still processing the data, and then they were backbridging it to the new system, and it was a nightmare. They did a poor job. And that was I was like a year and a half in, and just this junior engineer. And I said, you're really having a lot of data quality issues. And I kind of wrote a paper on, like, we need to form a data quality team to address all these issues. And I would say that the pivotal point is, like, it was really interesting. as they were transforming as a company, they asked you to like, do you want to go down an engineering track or do you want to go down more of a like project management business track? And I had to make that decision. And the decision for me was I knew I could be like an okay programmer. I was never going to be a great programmer. That's what I felt at the time. Maybe that would have changed had I kept on doing it. But you know, I had a little OCD where I could like if I couldn't get something to compile or work, I would stay up for hours and hours. So it became frustrating a little bit. But I love like project management came naturally to me, and project management, program management, they're all about communication. I mean, 90% is about your people skills. So I took that track, and that's where I started as a project manager. Then I really got into agile and I was a scrum master. From a scrum master, I became like more of an agile coach. From an agile coach, I became like an agile program manager. From an agile program manager, and I'll go in more details of this journey. I basically, when my last position, um, I started as the first program manager hire at a company called WePay that was acquired. They were a fintech startup. They were acquired by JP Morgan Chase. And I was one program manager managing about, at that point, 15 engineering teams, would become 30 engineering teams, and about 70 product like managers. Eventually growing out a team of three others, and getting promoted up the ranks to an executive director of portfolio and program management. So that's just an overview sort of my progression through the different roles that I had. But at Oxford Health Plans on the East Coast, there was a pivotal moment. I was there 5 years, and I was fortunate to take a month off, and I went to Maui, Hawaii, and my uncle had a house, and I stayed with him. And there was this moment where I'm going to give everything up. I'm going to move to Maui. We're going to go in sort of the vacation rentals. But there was something with me, like I just spent 5 years building up my technology career, and I didn't want to give that up. And what was the next best thing to do? I was like, it was like 1999. Internet boom is like it is now with AI. It was,
Right, right.
it was just out of control. Every day you would look at your stock portfolio and it was literally up like 1%. And it was like consistent, like 1% every day. And it was like, I was young and you thought this would never stop. And I was like, I can't move out to Maui. The next best thing is I'll move to Silicon Valley. And what I did was, this was like one of the most, I'll just say it, like ballsy thing I ever did. It was November. I bought a ticket for like the beginning of February for San Jose. And I said it, between November and February, I'm just going to book interviews in Silicon Valley. I'm moving out. So in those days, everything was dial up in 1999. So when you would connect to your email, you were connecting through your phone line. And I would come home from work. California was 3 hours earlier, and I would download my emails because I was like applying for jobs. And it would take, and then this is not an exaggeration, it could take 20 minutes to download your email.
True,
Uh,
true.
it was crazy. So what I did was, I don't even know where I found this. I bought like for like $75. I bought a list of CEOs in Silicon Valley, and I bought this program to do like a mail merge. They didn't have
Wow.
any sophisticated
Right,
emailing
right.
things. So I put it together, sent it out to a couple of hundred companies, and one called Tumbleweed Communications like contacted me. And when I flew out in February, I had like five. interviews at different companies. One through a friend, another just through networking, like one or two through that email blast. And it was, long story short, I came back with the job at Tumbleweed Communications in Redwood City. They did secure FTP. I was working in their professional services department. And what we were doing was basically they would convert the print stream into PDFs and securely send it to customers. And back then, that was a big deal. So you could send trade confirms, electronically and securely. So that was another really great opportunity. I worked with Bank of New York. No, I worked with Bank of America. I worked with American Express, UPS, Wells Fargo. Great opportunity working with a lot of financial
But here I
companies.
want to ask, I want to stop you for a
Yeah,
while and just go back to your journey a bit, little bit more. So I realized that you mentioned about the first phase of your 7 5 6 7 years of your career journey with deciding on that I would pursue something on data because you had an exposure to the healthcare industry and you fall in love for that. Then you had a choice to make whether to go for a programmer side or a project management side, and something naturally called you to be a project management side, and you took that route. And then came this. This is the most crucial part. I think many of today's youngster do not take that kind of risk the way you portrayed it at 1999. That you lined up for yourself interviews before you decided that I'm on February. I have my ticket to San Jose, California, and I'm moving. Let me line up my interview, and do everything what it takes to get to the people. And what we call it as elevator pitch. You did it electronically, finding the. It is very difficult to find numbers of 100 people and putting it all together and sending them and managing communication. That takes a drive. Now, my only thing is over here, did you have any kind of guidance? Who was giving you this energy to go for it? Because I somehow feel, what is that exact, like today we say that you need to have a mentor, you need to learn from somebody. I mean, some guidance somewhere. I mean, during that time, what made you feel that this is a decision I should take a risk for?
that is such a great question. Reality, you okay? I'm going to tell you sort of what, like, one of the main impetuses, and this isn't like what you probably want to hear. I had dated this girl for a long time, and I was crazy in love with her, but it didn't work out. But I knew I couldn't be like on the same coast as her. So that was one. There was the impetus of I went to Maui and reflected for a month, and there was weather. I never wanted to deal with another East Coast winter or East Coast humid summer. That was one part. Two was this girl I couldn't get out of my head. And I knew the only way I could do that was put like 3,000 miles between us. And three was I was passionate about what I did. I loved what I did, and I wanted to be in the major leagues. And that was my pitch. Like my pitch when I interviewed with Tumbleweed and I was like interviewing with like a senior VP, I went, I feel like I've been training in the minor leagues of baseball, right? And I'm ready to come up to the majors in Silicon Valley and help you. And that really resonated with this guy. And yeah, that it was that combinations, and like I was young, and here's the last thing. It's I kind of knew if I stayed on the East Coast, I was at a juncture in my life. I was just like, like 31, I think at that point. I knew, like, something told me, Rob, if you stay on the East Coast, you're going to get married and you're going to stay on the East Coast the rest of your life. Like, now was the opportunity to take this risk and go all in. And, I am now, 24 years in living in California. I met my wife within 2 months of, like, moving out to California. I live in like gorgeous Monterey area. I mean, it all worked out, but it was scary. And I'll tell you, here's a story. I remember I'm about 2 months into, working in California. It's late at night. I'm working hard on something and I'm all alone. I'm like, I got no family near me. I don't really have friends yet. And I'm like, holy, what am I doing here? And I just said, you know what? I got to give it some time. And literally, within a week or two, like I meet my wife. And that was having my wife as an anchor, and her family who lived here. And that gave me the counter. I got very fortunate, that I met my wife. We're still married, 24 years later after I met her, married 22 years. She's been a wonderful influence on me.
Because my reason for asking this was, what happens? You as a youngster, the first decision we make is about money. Money attracts, and you take that step. Once you enter into that, then you realize whether it's going to go far or you're going to get stuck. You are quite intelligent to understand technology was booming. America had a great progression of year in technology stakes, and California and these all biggies which we call today Oracle, Microsoft, everybody was growing, IBM, everybody was growing, and the data, the one you got, the data part was exactly becoming a relevant resource for everyone in that part of the world. And somehow you figured it out very very early, like I think to 2010, the world was speaking about big data and all that thing, but I guess you will be the person who was working on it in 2005, 6, 7, the way you have
Hey,
navigated your.
I real, you know, I under, I've been good, I would say, at understanding trends when they're happening. So,
I
you
want to
know,
learn, how do you do that? That's the first question. What do you I this could have been the last question that to for the audience, but some or other way I see that either you are the trend setter or you capture the trend or the mega trend very fast and modulate or learn yourself to that part, what is needed to be, driving ahead of the curve. So can you, some wisdom in that side before we move on to the next phase of the question?
yeah, I would say I did my own startup called Family Thrive. Empowering the next generation of conscious leaders was like our sort of, vision mission. And that's when like no one was using Facebook yet, right? It had just come out. And I really sensed that that was a very powerful moment in the internet. I don't, you know, I think I learned about from, the internet boom in 1999 and the impact that that had on our lives. And just being able to connect the dots and, it you have to do a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading. I mean, I write my newsletter now, AI Quick Bytes, but I've always been doing a lot of readings you know, and then like, what do you use? Like, when you start using something and it starts adding value, you go, it's about like connecting the dots, right? And saying, hey, this is very useful. You know, social media was like that. Before Facebook, there were other, you know, there were a couple Friendster. There were a number of other like, social apps happening. It was exploding, and I don't know. I just kind of see and feel the trends, read a lot because they'll start talking about them a lot, particularly early on. So, I've just, yeah, I don't know. And it's with AI for me, that was when I was working at Bank of New York Mellon in 2017. There was a lot of hype on AI,
Yeah.
and where I was working, we had a lot of people working on AI. And then I started managing like 8 data science teams. And you could see, in 2017, the possibilities of what AI could do. They weren't able to really come to fruition until more Gen AI, in like 2022-ish, 2023, where they made it more accessible to the masses.
I come
And
to that part. I come to that
yeah,
part. I mean, that phase of your life because I see
yeah,
that. So I have been studying you as a somebody who is visionary to the trend what we see. For example, whatever happens in America, it takes 2 to 3 years to be a part of the world phenomena. Like whatever happens in Silicon Valley, what you saw in 2017 was probably 2020 was happening in the world over. What you see today in Silicon Valley or what you are doing right now, it will impact the world, all the by next 2 years or the
that's a
way
great
it is
question.
going to happen. So I come
What's
to
the
that
diff?
part.
Oh, you want to come to that? I'll tell you
Yeah,
my
we'll come to
particular
that part because I
attitude.
think
Yeah.
that has AI, ethical issues in AI, and all the other concerns and challenges which the world wants to ask any AI visionary leader. But before that, of your 2005 to 2000, say 15. So what I feel is that, or I need to ask you on your career evolution. So, over the past 3 decades, you have worked in diverse roles across major companies like Indeed, Adobe, or the VPay that you said about managing teams, 15 engineering teams, and later to 30. So, as a leadership now, because here uh, your uh, your personality as a leader is coming up, and as somebody the organization is betting money on, and saying that you can manage bigger projects, high stakes project. So, how have these experiences shaped your leadership style and vision for the future? For example, or I would also want to add on, because these organizations have diverse cultural people from diverse, and not just for America but globally, they're working for globally. You, as someone who is navigating your career, how have you as a leader learned about this, or what is your special way of handling, or how have you adjusted or agreed or accepted, or in fact reformed and found, however you feel like. My question is in that critical 10 years of 2005 to 2015, where I could see that you are becoming a leader of high stake or visionary leader amongst your community and the people world over.
Wow, that's a great question. There's no like if you want to there's no silver bullet, right? There's no one thing. It's a combination of things. I would say, like at Adobe, Adobe was all about like they really believed early on, and now I think a lot of companies realize the importance of education. So they brought in the best of the best, like agile leaders, and I had an opportunity, to learn from them, and that was very influential on my agile career. Um, Reading a lot of books. I read a lot of books about agile, but more than agile, more about leadership, communication, and I made a lot of mistakes. Like I think it's very, very there's like it's so important to learn from your mistakes. I used to talk a lot, right? Instead of listen a lot. I'd say a leader listens and talks less. You got to ask questions. As I got further on in my career, I would make the analogy of it's like a therapist in that, like, when you're working with teams, you know what their dysfunctions are. I would say I could look at a Jira, any team's Jira, and within 15 minutes tell you like how mature they are as a team, and that comes after 20 years of working Jiras and those type of applications. Um, but you gotta know, and this only you can't read this. Like when I read my first like agile book, Michael Cohn was a great agile kind of explaining agile simply. You come out with a lot of piss and vinegar and you think you're going to change the world, and engineering teams will slap you in the face and they will tell you how they're going to work. So changing my style, like, from agile sort of, all in on agile to really listening. Every team, every company has a different culture. You have to work with that culture and see what they're willing, how far, how fast they're willing to progress. If you move, and this is all part of the journey to agility loop, if you move too fast and they're not ready, they'll, you get killed. It's like a video game, right? They're not ready. The analogy I would always use is, or the picture is an iceberg. The iceberg, the tip is sort of poking out of the water. Underneath it is all the dysfunction of that organization. If you uncover it too fast, some companies are not able to take it in that fast, and they'll kill the messenger, right? They're like, we're not, we are not ready. And I've had that happen. I have been killed. Even though you're right, like you're right, you're spot on, this is what they need. If they're not ready for it, they're not ready for it. And you, as a middle manager, program manager, are not going to be able to change the course or transform the course of a Fortune 500 company by yourself. So learning that and learning to listen, that's like, and using all my different skills in my tool chest. Sometimes it could be, you just start out with something very simple, like a simple Kanban board, of the flow of work, right? And really understanding sort of the philosophy of work, the flow of information, the processes of how we do work, how we think about work, how we build teams, how we create goals. It's all took, it's like I'm 30 years in and this is all, right there, and it's like the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, where, I had probably 30,000 hours. And sometimes I don't, to be honest, I don't give myself the credit for how much, I've learned and, how many mistakes I made. And I think it's really important. You
No,
don't
no,
want to
that's
make
your
mistakes on
experience. Now
purpose. You want to learn from them. Yeah.
you are very being very humble. That's your experience of 30 years that it takes you a 5 minutes of look at the things and understand what could have happened. And I really like the way you mentioned the iceberg example analogy. I know you could have said many things about many organizations, but very smart way you put up that what is exactly your role. And the second part is the you cannot single-handedly, even if you know that identified that this is the mistake or this is the thing for a Fortune 500 company, you cannot single-handedly do the impact changing. It needs a lot of greater way of presentation of flow and information for any change to happen, or
Yeah.
otherwise it.
I got a great quick story on that. Just to,
Yes.
I think and you can cut it out. But here, I won't mention the company, but this company, I literally thought I was going to save the company. It was early in my career, and I was doing a lot of things on the back end to make, to help the company. I was working. I literally almost had like, a nervous breakdown because I thought I could save the company. And a long story short, one day after things had come to a head, and the company had had a comeuppance on Wall Street, I meet the CEO in the gym, right? We are literally in the locker room. I swear to God, this is so funny. We're both naked, right? We're changing, right? And here I am talking to the CEO, and I went, oh man, I can't tell you. There were so many times I wanted to go in your office and tell you everything that was happening. And he was so dynamic and so, yeah, he was unbelievable. And he goes, hey, Rob, you know what? I had so many people coming into my office and telling me what was going on. He said, like, I didn't know who to, like, basically who to trust or, what to believe because he was being told so many different things. And for some reason, that, like, kind of relieved that off of me. Like, I think realizing that you as one person, to take all that weight on your shoulders. One, to think you're that important or that you could actually make that big of a difference. Now, I'm not saying you can't make a difference, but what I'm saying is don't take the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? And put that type of pressure, particularly early in your career, because 99.9999999% of the people are not going to be able to change, from the ground up, a Fortune 500 company.
You,
You'll burn out.
this is a fantastic example. Half of the, or not half, in fact, more, many people who are workaholic or love to work actually feel the weight of burden of growth of company to themselves. And as you said, the nervous breakdown. I have seen increasing number of stress related disease, lifestyle related disease, family relation issues, all this coming up from the time because you have a 24 hours time and you give it to your company thinking that you will change everything at a very, when you are at a very low, at a lower hierarchy, and you give it your everything, and you are fortunate enough to meet your CEO and get it, get that realization. But in the Indian scenario, the hierarchies are very long, and you don't actually get, apart from your immediate manager or maybe little bit higher, you do not actually able to meet the leadership, senior leadership. So what happens is many of these young people, they actually burn themselves out a lot of issues, and that never comes up in front. So I think in career planning and career navigation, right, that you brought that example, I think that's the reason why you could build yourself as a visionary leader and manage so many things. Because one part of your career, I also saw that you are founder of many things. So whatever is your passionate, you have founded that and you have started working on it. Apart from what your regular thing is there, and somehow job, it is not the job for you. I can, especially this AI and agility, it is not a job for you. I think you are alive. You are like the real life. I would say you are living the life of agility and Scrum and project management. You are like that. Not a you are a book
I,
in
I,
yourself.
I, I, I
I
have lots
wouldn't
to
say.
learn. One of the things I say about like when I talk about agile or just the profession, like the more I learn, the less I know. It's crazy. Like when you start really going deep, and I've been on some like cohorts where people meet, like once a month, and like more senior types of program managers, program leaders, and or agilists. And it's kind of funny. The more you learn, like I think most people who've been doing it a long time say like, the less I know. Like you learn stuff like, oh, I didn't know that. Now I got to. So yeah, it's sort of uh, like not an oxymoron. What would it be? It's kind of like a dichotomy in that the more you learn, the less you know. You would think the more you learn, the more you know. It's
No,
so
I,
it's a
I,
net.
I have an
It's
example for it.
yeah.
When the space studies were happening, so there were a few scientists of NASA who told that the more you go deeper in space, you realize how less we know about this space. So it's the same thing. I feel it's an universe in itself. Sorry, I mean I didn't want to cut you across, but
No, 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 no. It's
our
true,
last
and I
10
think
minutes of conversation, and now I come to what you're doing today. I have only three areas to ask, and I'm sure many of would have asked you many times. But again, because you're an AI visionary leader, and there are three perspective I want to ask from that. Firstly, is about the current landscape of AI. How do you think it is influencing the businesses, big and small? Especially, I would like to highlight you for young India, people from India or this part of the world, how they should be ready about AI, because we do understand America is much more technologically advanced, structurally advanced. But how do you think the world will be affected, and what should be the readiness for this part of the world? Second perspective I want to know about is AI and job losses or taking over job. Is it a threat, opportunity? You've seen 3 decades of different kind of, from starting of computer to starting of internet, from starting of internet to, you've seen the social media revolution. Now you're seeing the AI revolution. You're someone who's seen the entire phase globally. So I think you would answer it that for us. And then using a last question is, from the AI perspective is, how do the somebody with a young small startups are today, when the startups are the hotbeds, how scaling up of startups or growth, or what is that secret sauce of leveraging AI, tech or non-tech, how it should be for the young entrepreneurs who are into this, and they're just portraying. I think everybody's using the buzzword as AI, but exactly is it AI or not? We also, we do not know. It is a hashtag which comes to populate as a promotional element, but in reality, unable to understand how the AI will leverage them. So these are
Yep.
the three aspects,
Woo.
and I would like to hear from you from that
All
information.
right, all right. That's a lot to cover, but I read it. So, uh, readiness, right? Play that one more time. So the readiness is how do you best prepare for like a career in AI? Um, so here's what I think is the most amazing thing about AI. No one is really an expert, right? It literally changes every day, right? And I'm not joking. Like every day, there is something being announced that, and every day, the best model changes. One day it's OpenAI, the next, it's Google, and then it's Anthropic, and then there are or Amazon, and so, but that's a great opportunity, right? That opportunity that no one's a true expert, and that if you go deep in a particular area that you're passionate about, in 6 months you could be like a world leading expert in that niche. It's like, so the riches are in the niches, and I'll get back to that, right? So find what you're super excited about and go deep. Now that could be as an engineer, right? I think it's a little more complicated, to kind of go the full stack, but there's a lot of different areas and tools that you could become an expert in, that you can get a job in fairly quickly. So that's one thing. I always go back, and there's different schools of thought on this. From a readiness is, you know, I I say it's like finding your passion. So if we go back, I've always been interested in technology going back to high school, right? If you get into technology because you want to make money and you don't really like it, then like just like you said about like right now, like most of my free time, fortunately or unfortunately, is spent in front of the computer learning and writing because I love it. Like that's what I choose to do in my time off. And a lot of pickleball. I love pickleball. But out so it's readiness is choose what you love, and choose something you're passionate about learning about, and then go deep. And there's just yeah, there's so many. Like I could talk with anyone, and in a conversation, like, "What are you interested?" "Oh, I'm interested in data." All right, there are many careers in data, like responsible AI. Like when you look behind the covers of what it takes for a Fortune 500 company to implement AI safely, there are they don't have enough educated people to do it. They just don't, and that's a whole other conversation of these companies that are going to change the world. They're going to have, particularly the older ones, are going to have to, and I'm going to, uh, let's jump into AI job losses. So, and I'll give you the example. So I'll knock off two birds with one stone. What I talk about a lot is if you go back in history, right? And don't kid yourself. This is a revolution. AI is like the invention of electricity, right? It is so fundamentally going to change the 21st century. So, with every type of revolution, the industrial revolution, what I talk about a lot is like America in the 1920s when they were bringing in like mechanized farming, right? Now, you have to remember in the 20s, 1920s, which is not that long ago, it was like, and don't quote me on these numbers, but like 70% of the working population worked in the farms, right? Everything was manual. When mechanized machinery came in, that was a disruption. Now, I haven't gone back to read the papers, but I guarantee you there was machinery's replacing us. What are we going to do? Now, what America did that was really smart was that's where they built their educational system, right? So during that inflection point, they built out sort of schools for because a lot of children were working in the farms. So instead of them not having jobs, they went to school and they learned trades. Who's going to maintain these machines? Who's going to build them? Who's going to design them? Go back to the PC. When the PC came out, the hype was you're only going to have to work 4 days a week. There were people like, the PC is going to replace us, and there was fear, we're going to lose jobs. Again, many jobs have been created because of the personal computer industry, right? Then the internet comes, right? And brick and mortar stores, there's never going to be brick and mortar. They're going to be replaced by online. Now, that took like 20 years. There are still brick and mortar stores. However, they've been significantly impacted. What I say about AI is that it's just going to happen faster. But here's the good news. The good news is AI is going to create hundreds, millions of jobs worldwide. I am, in my experience in working in corporate America, there are so many jobs. Like if you asked 2 years ago, is there going to be a responsible AI department? No, that's hiring. Putting a model into production safely, ethically, so that it doesn't hallucinate is wickedly hard, particularly if you're taking, the open AI models and then you're trying to like put like a rag on top of it with your own corporate proprietary kind of data. Getting that right takes, and this guy keeps falling out, takes really, really smart people, architects. But what I'll also talk about as far as the secret sauce, right? I go, what's old is new again. You, you got to look at AI is just a tool, right? A hammer to a carpenter is just a tool. The hammer is not going to replace the carpenter. AI will not replace humans, not in our lifetime. There's so much fundamental work. Now, this will take 20, 30 years of perfecting. I could be wrong. And where I could be wrong would be, like when OpenAI came out with originally came out with ChatGPT. That was a disruptive force. That was a jump. Perhaps there's a jump where magically, and what I see on the back end, I'm working with world class like AI people, companies. There's a ton of work with really smart people. This is not magic. It is really hard. Those are all new jobs, from architects to AI engineers to moving data, data engineers and the plumbing that it takes to make data accessible. Data was never and has never been sexy. Data is sexy now. People understand how important it is, and you got to, and there's a lot like here's something new like prediction, synthetic data, being able to create data and then PII, which is personal information, trying to create data without personal information so that you could train your models. These are all new jobs. These are all new startups. These are hundreds of thousands of jobs. So don't worry about your losing your job. What I would worry about, or here, I'd worry about the person who's going deep on AI now. And if you're not, they're going to get your job. Like you will lose, like companies, and this is the thing, the secret sauce, right? The secret sauce is culture. Secret sauce is governance. So when you create a company, and you're an AI first company, you're training your people to use AI tools, to think AI first, to support them top down in using it in their daily jobs, but also there's there's just a new way of thinking of how we implement it. And my prediction is we have not had the first killer AI first application. And if you're a startup, that doesn't start on the back end, in my opinion, right? You're not going to build, a, another open AI model unless you have hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. But you can build on top of it and niche down in a very specific area. Or where I think the playing field is, the niche is really the front end, right? We are at what I call the DOS prompt of AI. You're typing in, right? Like that's how the DOS prompt was. Before Windows, before GUIs, you would just, you would be at a C prompt and you'd be, yeah, no one, you had to be techie to use it, right? That's where we're at. Like, and there's not many great examples of, comp, you know, mature companies leveraging AI from the front end. They're really working the back end, and there's been good stuff. But I think the next big thing is going to be the front end, and agentic. I think agentic is going to be used, but everyone knows that. I mean, there's been so much writing that agentic is the next big thing. That's where you have agents, and it's, like you can type in, you know, I want a vacation in Maui, 10 days. My price range is between $200 and $300 for an Airbnb. I want to book restaurants, da, 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 da. And it'll just go out and in an hour come back and here are your flights, here's your Airbnb, here are your, restaurants, like agents passing, like it's like having multiple LLMs kind of coordinating and working for you. That there's a lot of work going on in that space. However, it's ridiculously hard, particularly if you're playing by the rules and, with the PII and, responsible AI. There's a lot of overhead. I mean, I think it's super important. I agree with it 100%. But, there's, you know, and here's a takeaway that I learned. Simplicity is really hard. Making something so simple that you don't have to train a person because they can just use it, you know, that is very hard. The funny quote I'll always use is the famous writer called Mark Twain is, I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long letter. Uh, Design and interface design is like that. Like less is more. Like Google, right? Google nailed it, right? In that, you just, and maybe in some ways, OpenAI, as I think about it, is just that very simple type into this box. But that's where I think the opportunity is for startups, is really on the front end, on the UI, on top of AI.
Robert, I want to thank you for this masterclass. I just enjoyed everything out of it. It's only little fortunate that I studied to have a discussion with you. I could understand what you're talking to because I realized you are thinking way ahead of even what is come in front of us. Chat GPT. That is what we are talking today here, writing some, some generative AI sense or nonsense. You're talking about agencies, you're talking about doing a hell lot of work and getting it done for you, and that with a responsiveness. And you're talking of something which many of my viewers would open up a startup about. I felt like that. Like that's something it was a masterclass for me. And I know I had blocked your time for 1 hour and you're almost there, and somehow it feels very delighted or delightful, in fact, that you could spend time today with me, and I could take some learning from you, because I'm still feeling that I would request you for another session
I,
in
I'm
another
I'm
three
totally in,
months.
and I really like at this point in my life. I'll leave you with two things. One, I really want to give back to community, right? And that's why I have and I've rebranded on Silicon Valley AI think tank, and we have meetups quarterly around Silicon Valley. Is really building community and giving back. I think there was this futurist, and he wrote in 1970, and I talked a lot about this in my own talks. And he said in 1970, he said the 21st century is going to be about learning, unlearning, and relearning, right? And if that, what my advice would be is you have to be ferocious in your ability to learn. That's one. Two, in your ability to adapt. Things are going to change and continue to change, and realize that that's going to happen. So you may learn everything about a particular software stack, and in 6 months it could be obsolete, but the foundation is always going to be the same. So it's not
Right.
throwaway, I got to start from zero. Now you kind of understand some foundational concepts, right? And what I would say, he also writes about, and was really interesting, and I've spoken with some scholars about this pace of learning is stressful. It's going so fast. Humans cannot adapt to the speed. So another prediction of mine will be we will unconsciously or consciously slow AI down because we can't move that fast, right? And he also wrote about that it's not only stressful for individuals, it's stressful for societies. It's stressful for countries. It's this pace that we're on is in some ways unsustainable, right? So as a human, as an individual, what you can do is, be open to learning, be open to relearning, and have a ferocious appetite for learning. And as a knowledge worker, that is going to be key for success.
Fantastic. My God. Thank you so much, Robert. The reason is you are
Pleasure.
leaving all of us who are watching and hearing here this session with a curiosity, and it's something to learn about and come back. I think this is what is very, very needed. Somebody like you, a visionary who has seen the entire journey of technology that we are living in today, and it is coming from your mouth, means it has a great impact on all the listeners who want to build career or are interacting with technology in everyday life. All of us are. We are using mobile phone, we are using many things in our daily lives. And
Yeah.
I think some or other way, even it would be wrong that when I mentioned non-tech and tech, because somehow it is merging together, and everything is about living a life with a right pace, so that you don't get stressed. As you said, AI is such fast that we may not be able to manage the speed. Second is the purpose of living the life, which you managed to find when you found your wife in
A good
California.
woman. If one
No,
takeaway, you gotta. If you don't have a good,
I,
if you don't have a happy wife, you don't have a happy life.
I see. I did want to break the flow that time, but somehow the credit goes to her for your approach and your passion to the
Yeah,
area of work. So
she's
I would
very supportive.
congratulate her as well, and you for being yourself. Thank you so much for your time. And we close the session for today. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. It's been truly an honor to be here, and I look forward to talking and growing together.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. So I close my session here, dear friends. So we had Robert with us, and you have any questions, any queries which you feel you need to ask from the leader, please. You see the YouTube description. You have all the emails and to reach out to me, and I'll convey to Robert. And in fact, we will curate a way in which I can give some specific topic, so that as he mentioned, to build communities and contribute to communities, we give a specific topic and he can bring on learning about that, and we can have a session going forward as you see this episode. And with this, thank you so much everyone for watching. Stay subscribed and stay happy. Enjoy yourself. Bye bye.
Bye bye.